The psychological warfare of special forces. The invisible battlefield. Understanding psychological warfare. Before the first shot is fired, before boots even hit the ground, some battles are already being won or lost, not through firepower or superior numbers, but through something far more subtle: psychological warfare. For special forces, psychological dominance is not just a tactic, it's a core element of strategy. In environments where every move counts and direct confrontation is often too costly, influencing the mindset of the enemy becomes the most powerful weapon of all. So, what is psychological warfare? At its core, it's about shaping perception. It's the art of instilling fear, doubt, hesitation, or even false confidence in the adversary. It's about confusing, demoralizing, and disorienting not just individuals, but entire enemy units or populations, without ever pulling the trigger. This type of warfare isn't new. Throughout history, leaders have used deception, manipulation, and intimidation to gain an edge. From Sun Tzu's famous principle, all warfare is based on deception, to the Trojan horse legend, the mind has always been a battlefield. But modern special forces take it to another level. Imagine this. You're a militant commander in a remote region. Over the last few days, your men have reported strange signs. Drones you can't see but feel. Footprints where no patrol should be. Radios picking up distorted messages in your language. Then, without warning, a whisper spreads among your ranks. They're already here. Paranoia sets in. Command breaks down. You withdraw without a shot being fired. That's psychological warfare in action. Special forces use a wide range of psychological tools. They may simulate the presence of a much larger force, create false signals to confuse surveillance, or leave behind signs of infiltration, half-open doors, unfamiliar footprints, or encrypted messages, designed to make the enemy feel watched, hunted, and vulnerable. They exploit cultural symbols, superstitions, and local tensions. In Afghanistan, for example, it wasn't uncommon for psychological ops teams to play sounds at night. Crying children, whispers in Pashto, or unfamiliar chanting, to unsettle enemy fighters who already feared unseen forces. But it's not just about scaring the enemy. It's also about controlling the narrative. Special operations units often operate hand-in-hand with psychological operations, PsyOps teams, crafting disinformation, propaganda, and perception management campaigns that erode the enemy's will to fight while bolstering local support. This invisible war is fought in mines, not trenches, and its goal is clear: break the enemy before the battle even begins. Psychological warfare doesn't make headlines. It doesn't explode, bleed, or leave behind obvious scars. But its impact is long-lasting, often decisive. In the world of special forces, it's not the loudest weapons that win wars. It's the quietest ones, and in that silence lies the true battlefield. Tools of the mind. The techniques used by special forces. In special operations, victory often begins long before the first objective is reached. It starts in the mind, through subtle techniques that disorient, confuse, and ultimately break the confidence of the adversary. These are the tools of psychological warfare: quiet, invisible, and devastatingly effective. Unlike conventional units, special forces aren't trained just to fight. They're trained to manipulate perception, both individually and strategically. Every move, every silence, every signal can be part of the plan. One of the most fundamental tools is environmental control. By choosing the time and place of engagement or appearing to, operators can induce stress, fatigue, or fear in the enemy. Night operations are a classic example. Special forces own the darkness. Equipped with night vision and infrared, they turn darkness into an advantage while the enemy is left blind and vulnerable. Even the sound of footsteps, the flicker of a distant light, or a brief radio transmission can plant seeds of paranoia. Then there's the use of sensory manipulation. In some operations, operators may trigger confusion or unease using deliberate soundscapes. ultrasonic noise, distorted voices, or symbolic sounds like distant weeping, wolves, or local cultural audio cues. The idea isn't to terrify, but to create uncertainty, the enemy's greatest weakness. Special forces also use false presence techniques. They may simulate a large unit by creating multiple boot tracks, leaving behind staged campsites, or jamming communications selectively to make it appear that the enemy is surrounded. Sometimes, they'll trigger motion sensors or alarms deliberately to increase fatigue and confusion. A single operative can make it seem like 20. The gray man tactic is equally powerful, especially in urban warfare or intelligence gathering. This technique teaches operatives how to completely blend in, becoming so ordinary and unremarkable that they disappear into a crowd. Mastering posture, eye contact, even breathing patterns, they can infiltrate spaces unnoticed, observe enemy routines, and psychologically destabilize adversaries who later realize they were watched. Another potent technique is targeted disinformation. Operatives might plant false documents, stage mock meetings, or accidentally leak intel to manipulate enemy behavior. A well-placed lie reinforced by small, consistent clues can cause entire units to reposition, abandon objectives, or waste resources chasing ghosts. All of this is designed not to provoke, but to influence, to suggest, nudge, and guide the enemy into self-destruction, without them ever realizing they've been played. These techniques are practiced relentlessly. Operators are taught to read body language, detect micro-expressions, and resist deception themselves. They undergo courses on neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive bias, and behavioral psychology. Every gesture in a room, every pause in a conversation, every twitch on a face becomes part of the tactical landscape. Psychological warfare isn't theatrical, it's surgical. It's the art of subtle influence, calculated ambiguity, and controlled unpredictability. And when used correctly, it makes the enemy question everything, including themselves. Interrogation, influence, and control. In special operations, information is everything. A single name, a radio frequency, or the time of a meeting can shift the course of an entire mission. But when bullets can't deliver the answers, special forces turn to one of the most intricate and misunderstood battlefields of all: the human mind under pressure. Forget the Hollywood tropes of brute force and torture. In the real world, the most effective interrogators use silence, subtlety, and psychological leverage. The goal isn't to break the subject, it's to make them talk willingly. Elite Special Forces operators are trained to conduct or support interrogation using psychological manipulation, not coercion. One of the most effective techniques is rapport building. It might sound counterintuitive, but trust can be a powerful weapon. By creating an environment where the subject feels heard, respected, or even slightly superior, the interrogator shifts from adversary to confidant. Then comes the use of cognitive overload. Sleep deprivation, disorientation, temperature control, and irregular routines don't cause direct harm, but they wear down mental defenses. When used subtly and ethically, these methods create a state of mental fog, making it harder for a subject to maintain lies, timelines, or resistance. More refined techniques involve fragmentation of identity. An interrogator might challenge the subject's worldview or beliefs, introduce contradictory facts, or subtly suggest betrayal by their own side. This psychological unbalancing creates internal tension, opening cracks in loyalty or ideology that can be exploited over time. One of the most potent tools is the illusion of knowledge. An interrogator may pretend to already know most of the answers, using partial truths, fabricated documents, or staged recordings to force a subject into confirming or correcting details. The subject feels cornered, not by violence but by inevitability. Special forces also train to turn assets, flipping enemy informants, low-level fighters, or even high-value targets. These conversions aren't achieved through threats, but by exploiting motivations, fear of consequences, desire for protection, guilt, greed, or even ideology. A skilled operator can plant the seed of doubt. Why are you risking your life for leaders who don't know your name? And let it grow until the target defects willingly. All of this requires emotional control, deep cultural understanding, and the ability to read people in real time. Many operators undergo psychological profiling themselves to better understand the techniques used on them and how to resist them, because it works both ways. Just as special forces exploit weakness in others, they must protect their own minds. Resistance training is part of the process. Simulated interrogations, role reversals, and ethical stress tests prepare them for capture, coercion, or manipulation. They're taught to control their body language, use mental compartmentalization, and even feed false information under pressure without appearing deceptive. Interrogation in special operations isn't about domination, it's about control. Control of the narrative, control of the dynamic, and ultimately control of the information flow. In these silent duels of will and wit, victory isn't loud, it's quiet, precise, psychological, and it's often won before the subject even realizes the battle has begun. PsyOps. Manipulating the enemy's reality. When the goal isn't to destroy the enemy but to control how they think, act, and react, psychological operations, PsyOps, become the most powerful tool in a special forces arsenal. PsyOps go beyond battlefield tactics. They're about shaping the enemy's perception of reality itself. If a combatant believes they are surrounded, cut off, or already defeated, even if none of it is true, the outcome can be decided without a single shot fired. It's not deception for its own sake. It's strategic influence carefully orchestrated to achieve maximum psychological disruption. One of the core principles of PsyOps is perception management. Special forces might leave behind evidence of overwhelming force, boot prints from non-existent patrols, spent shell casings planted where no battle occurred, or drone flyovers designed to provoke panic. In the jungle, this could mean playing predator calls at night. In the desert, dropping leaflets implying betrayal within enemy ranks. The goal: create fear, suspicion, and hesitation, the true enemies of discipline. A classic example was during the Gulf War, where US PsyOps dropped millions of leaflets warning Iraqi soldiers that their positions were being targeted. Many surrendered before the attack ever came. Another example: loudspeaker campaigns, using cultural knowledge to broadcast religious messages or sounds of approaching forces, psychologically breaking enemy morale without direct confrontation. In modern conflicts, digital PsyOps have taken center stage. Fake radio transmissions, spoofed social media posts, and planted videos can influence both enemy fighters and civilian populations. Special forces and intelligence agencies work together to craft narratives that undermine enemy leadership, sow distrust within ranks, or erode public support for hostile groups. This manipulation is precise and calculated. It's not about lying blatantly, it's about offering just enough truth to be believed, then guiding the target toward a desired reaction. This might mean amplifying an internal feud, fabricating a failed mission, or leaking false intel that leads enemy forces into traps or logistical failure. But PsyOps are not only directed outward, they can also protect friendly forces. By spreading misinformation about troop movements or technological capabilities, special forces can divert attention from real operations. During raids, false timelines and decoy attacks are used to confuse observers and protect operational security. Of course, the ethical line in PsyOps is razor thin. While psychological influence is legal under international law when used against combatants, the potential to manipulate civilians or cause unintended consequences is very real. That's why modern PsyOps units are not just staffed by soldiers, but by linguists, anthropologists, behavioral scientists, and cultural experts. Because to manipulate the enemy's reality, you first have to understand their mind, their fears, their values, their blind spots. Only then can you rewrite the story they believe they're living. In the end, PsyOps are about control, not through destruction but through illusion. Not by overwhelming strength, but by weaponizing belief. It's one of the quietest forms of warfare and one of the most effective. Mental fortitude. Protecting your own mind. It's easy to think of psychological warfare as something done to others, shaping enemy behavior, breaking opposition morale, or turning perception into a weapon. But for Special Forces operators, the most important mind they must master is their own. Operating in the shadows comes with an invisible cost. These elite soldiers face extreme stress, isolation, uncertainty, and trauma, often without public acknowledgement or even official recognition of their actions. In environments where failure is not an option and mistakes can be fatal, maintaining mental clarity under pressure isn't just helpful, it's a matter of survival. From the very beginning, Special Forces training is designed to test the mind before the body. Candidates are pushed into confusion, exhaustion, and fear. The point isn't just to weed out the weak, it's to forge a mindset capable of operating under chaos. That means learning how to regulate stress responses, how to focus under sensory overload, and how to make split-second decisions when adrenaline surges and the world narrows to a single heartbeat. This psychological endurance is reinforced through mental inoculation, controlled exposure to extreme conditions. Whether it's through simulated interrogations, survival exercises, or exposure to betrayal scenarios, the goal is to build emotional immunity. Operators are trained to compartmentalize fear, delay emotional processing, and sustain calm during crisis. They must learn to remain functional while overwhelmed, a rare ability that defines elite performance in the field. But the enemy isn't always external. Special operators also train to resist manipulation, to detect disinformation, withstand psychological tactics, and even survive attempts at brainwashing or coercion if captured. Resistance training such as the US SEER program, survival evasion, resistance escape, places soldiers in simulated captivity, pushing them to maintain control over their thoughts, identity, and mission even under duress. Yet this psychological armor has its price. Many operators return from deployment emotionally detached, unable to switch off the hyper-awareness that kept them alive. Some suffer from PTSD, anxiety, or depression, not from single traumatic events, but from sustained exposure to moral ambiguity and life-or-death decisions. The constant need for vigilance, secrecy, and control can create lasting internal tension. That's why mental health support is becoming a priority within modern Special Forces communities. Peer counseling, trauma-informed therapy, and performance psychology are being integrated into training and post-deployment care. Elite operators are increasingly encouraged to speak about emotional resilience, not as weakness, but as another form of tactical strength. Because resilience isn't about being unaffected, it's about taking damage and continuing the mission. Special Forces soldiers know that the battlefield doesn't end when the gunfire stops. The war continues in the quiet moments, on the flight home, in the silence of memory, in the face of everything they can't talk about. Protecting their minds isn't just a personal duty, it's a strategic necessity. Because in a world where perception can be a weapon, mental fortitude is the shield that keeps them standing. The war you never see. Not all wars are fought with bullets. Some are fought with silence, suggestion, and shadow. In the world of Special Forces, victory often comes not from overwhelming firepower, but from understanding the human mind, its fears, its habits, its limits. To control perception is to control the outcome. To win without fighting is the highest form of mastery. But the price of that mastery is steep. Because those who learn to bend others must first learn to bend themselves, without breaking. These operatives are not just warriors. They are manipulators of reality, architects of confusion, and masters of psychological resilience. And when the mission ends, they carry the weight of everything they've seen, done, and influenced. Silently. So next time you think warfare is only about force, remember, Some of the most powerful victories are never seen. They are felt, and they are won in the mind. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay aware, and remember, the most dangerous battlefield is the one no one else can see.